Good evening. We have a couple of minutes or so before we start. We're due to start at 7, so welcome to this, the final in our series of webinars. Thank you for filling in the poll. It just gives me an idea of the age of the children that you have at home, that you are taking care of and looking after during this time. Webinars are strange things because I can't see any of you, so I'm glad there's some people here. What I'd really like, if possible, is if you have specific questions. I've looked at the forms that we received, but if you do have specific questions, please pop them into the question and answer section, and then I can keep an eye on them as we go through and try to make sure I answer them. Okay. So it's 7 o'clock now. I think what I'll do is I will start, and I will, as we go through, share my screen with you so you can follow through the slides. We will send everybody a PDF of the slides as well. So if you were wanting to make notes, you'll get the slides as a prompt. And like I said, please do pop questions into the questions and answers. It's possible to do that anonymously as well. So please feel that you're able to do that. Okay, right, let's get started. So I might end the poll. Brilliant. And let's share my screen. Lovely. So I hope everyone can see that. It's the front slide of the Parent Carer Wellbeing for Child Wellbeing webinar. Welcome to it. It's the third of a series of pairs of webinars that we received funding for to deliver from the Awards for All fund. And they put forward the opportunity for us to bid to develop and present resources to help both parents and carers and education staff during this challenging time where young people have had to manage COVID and COVID-19, and both being in lockdown, but also going back to school and coming out of lockdown as well. So we're really pleased to have had the opportunity to be part of this. Our previous sets of webinars covered resilience and also anxiety, and the anxiety webinars are available on the YMCA Trinity training website. So YMCA Trinity, we cover Cambridgeshire and Suffolk, and you can find it there, and also it's available publicly on YouTube as well. So as you can see from the slides, it's June 2021. Oh, hi Olga. Thank you for raising your hand. I don't know if you meant to. I won't be able to hear you, but perhaps if you could pop what you'd like. Let me see if I can find the chat. It's not showing me. I can't see the chat whilst I'm presenting on screen share. So please do pop the question into the questions and answer, because I can see those while I'm sharing my screen as well. Oh, here we go. Okay. It's good to know that the hand gestures work, though, so that's good, because I think there is a gesture for pace and volume. So please do use those, and I can keep track of how it's going. Okay, so the anxiety webinars that we presented a few months ago are available on YMCA YouTube. And as I said, we are the YMCA for Suffolk and Cambridgeshire. We're a joined up service, and we have a whole range of different services that we offer to the community. And I'm part of the mental health training team. My name's Laura Hawksley. And we work developing training that really is designed to help us address some of the mental health challenges that young people face, both in schools and outside of schools. And that's our starting point for today's webinar. The other starting point is the sad information that the NHS survey came up with, which is actually 1 in 6 of the young children in school are likely to have a mental health issue, and whether it is identified or not identified. And it has gone up during COVID-19. And in response to that, we wanted to think about not just how we work with the young people and the children, but also about the parents and carers that are around them, and how you are their most important people generally in their lives. And we wanted to put something together for yourselves. So, okay. So I've talked about the question and answer function. Please do use that. It is the main way that I can see and communicate with yourselves. So that's really useful. There is no such thing as a silly question. All questions are valid. And, you know, if I use acronyms or I'm using terminology that doesn't make sense to you, please let me know. And you are able to ask your questions anonymously if you'd like to as well. Some of the ideas we talk about today may or may not be useful for those of you who are neuroatypical. So please do pick and choose what you will find valuable for yourselves. And the same for those of you that are neurotypical. Some of them you might not like these ideas. You're the experts in terms of yourselves. And so use your common sense, I think, is kind of what we're saying. You also know yourself and your children. You're the experts on your young people in your houses, and you know how any changes you make to your own behaviour will affect them, and how best to go about implementing that and making the changes that you need to make for your well-being. It's been a tricky year, over a year now, for all of us, and please do look after yourself during today's webinar. Please make sure you do take the time to stretch, to move, to have a break. And if some of the topics we talk about raise emotions in you, please be gentle with yourselves and take care of yourselves. Whilst we've all been in the same storm over the last year, we haven't all had the same boat, and we've not all had the same companions in our boats with us. So our resources and our capacities have been different for everybody. So please be gentle with yourselves as we go through today. And you will see me fidget, you'll see me move, because it's important to me that I practice what I preach as well. So bear with me if I do. So the purpose of this webinar today, is what I'm hoping you're expecting to hear, is to look at why adult wellbeing, parent wellbeing, is important in the home, and why is it important for our children. And to do that, we're going to look at a little bit about some of the neuroscience. We're going to look at some of the wider research. We'll start looking at what wellbeing is, and then also follow up with tips that we can use to boost our own sense of wellbeing. And I can't stress enough that wellbeing is hard, and a lot of us would have been struggling with it. And this isn't about saying that if you've got low wellbeing, you will be a terrible parent, because that's absolutely not the case. And I think, you know, there is no right and there is no wrong. having mental illness yourself or having low well-being, it will change how you parent. It will mean that some things are harder for you, and there might be some areas where you might need more or different types of support. But absolutely, you can still be a good parent and be what your child will need for you. Okay, so I can't stress that enough. So we're going to look at why adult wellbeing matters in the home, how it impacts on our children, what it looks like, and again, those tips and those strategies as well. So we'll start off thinking about wellbeing and mental health. So when we talk about mental health, it's not just the opposite of mental illness. Okay, it includes a sense of feeling like you can cope, you can manage, you can enjoy life to a degree, and that actually things aren't always great, but actually you can manage it, you can be productive, and you can interact in relationships as well as in your community. And well-being itself is more about an emotional state at a particular given moment. So it can fluctuate throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the month. And well-being can exist in times of stress, in times of joy, in times of pain, and in times of loss as well, and family illness. So it is a continuum that changes over time. And like I said, be that within an hour or within a day or even within years. So let's move on to our next slide. Why does adult wellbeing matter at home? Kind of stating the obvious, but our children live with us. Okay, we are the base. We are the place that they grow from, that they explore from. And depending on ages and everything else, we're the base that they come home to. And children learn and develop, and they grow when they feel safe. So having an adult around them that they can feel safe with is really important. And that's where well-being comes in. So as adults, our behaviour is a guide for our children. It's a model. They will learn and copy behaviours from us and how we function and cope in the world. So if we can demonstrate and feel okay about how we're doing things and have a sense of well-being, then actually they will pick that up and it will help lift their own sense of well-being. But also as well, if we're acting and taking actions that boost our own well-being, they will also copy that. But the same is also true. You know, if we're struggling and we are turning to unhelpful coping strategies, they will copy that and they will feel potentially less safe with some of those. If you know, a classic example is alcohol use. It might feel like a good coping strategy on an evening for us as an adult, but it may leave our child feeling slightly less safe. And I think as well, the idea that stress and emotions can spread throughout groups and throughout families, throughout classrooms. And that's lovely when we think of it being as happiness and that we're all having a good laugh and we're all experiencing joy. But it can be less pleasant and more challenging for children if that is a lot of sadness and a lot of stress. And I think what's really important as well is that it's important, we all have stress, but it's about having breaks from that as well for the children and the young people. So if we're thinking about the impact of low well-being on our children and why it's important, this again is probably saying things that you probably know, to be fair. The more stressed you are, the less you have to give. And that's in regard to empathy, patience, and energy. Okay, it's really hard to keep going, as all of us will know and have been there. There's also an increased likelihood of illness. And one of the key things which is really important as well is that if we have a sense of low well-being, we're often more wrapped up and more caught up in our own head and in our own thinking and less available. And that might well be less physically available in that we might be struggling to get out of bed, or it might be emotionally available. Actually, we might just not be able to take and be aware of our children in the same way. Low well-being feels pretty uncomfy. It's not a good thing. It doesn't feel nice. And it can lead us to behaviours to try and get out of that spiral, to help us, things that we can do to help us make us feel better. And some of those can be helpful, which is what we'll talk about throughout the rest of this presentation, but some of them can be really unhelpful. Might be, for example, using lots of alcohol. There might be drugs involved. There can be overspending, is quite a classic one that comes up because people seek the distraction of Amazon to take them out of thinking about what they're struggling with. So there's a range of behaviours, and actually I haven't got it on here, but social media is a big one as well, that actually we can want to distract ourselves from our own thoughts and therefore spend more time on social media. And again, that means we're not emotionally there for our children, and we can be caught up in a vicious circle of thinking that everybody else's life is better than ours. And that's tricky in itself. And again, low well-being can leave us with that feeling of just feeling like we can't do it, that it's too much, that it's overwhelming. Okay, so that's why low well-being becomes unhelpful for our children. So the reason it's important is because our children need from us our presence. So we can give them a safe and supportive physical, chemical and built environment. So that might be, we can provide, we can feed, we can keep them warm. That's one of the three key pillars, what our children need from us. They need sound and appropriate nutrition. They need proper physical care. But alongside that, the third pillar that is actually the Centre for Child Development based at Harvard has put these three points together for this slide. And it is for us to be able to provide a stable, responsive environment of relationships. So our children grow in the context of the relationships with the adults and the other people around them. And once again, this no means has to be perfect all the time. In fact, actually having perfect relationships all the time can in itself be unhelpful, to be honest. But they really do need somewhere where they can feel like they can make mistakes, where they feel like they can explore, where actually there's a safety net around them so we can help them bounce back when they're facing their own challenges, as well as us be able to bounce back when we're facing our own challenges. And what this network of stable relationships does for young people is it helps them not only learn about the world and process and understand it, but it helps them learn how to manage their own emotions and their own stress response systems. And that sets them in good stead for the future. And what we're going to go on and look at in a moment is our own stress response systems and how we can develop some tips to help us better manage our own systems, which again we would pass on to the children and the young people around us. So there are many, many ways that we impact on young people. And actually, do you know what? There are many, many ways that everybody impacts on us too. So this slide is, how does well-being impact on any adult and any human being as well as on children? But we are talking about the importance of adult well-being as a foundation for our children today. So our words and our tone of voice, this is different depending on whether we're relaxed and we're feeling okay, or whether we're stressed and we're feeling rubbish. Thinking about our facial expressions, whether we're looking impatient or whether we're looking interested or whether we're looking fed up. How we actually are physically behaving. Are we rushing? Are we ignoring? Are we stropping around? We all have very, very different sets of behaviours all of the time. a big one here as well is that idea of, are we actually paying attention? Are we really physically, emotionally, psychologically there with our children? Are we going at a pace that suits them and their age? And I mean, humans are amazing. Children are amazing because they are constantly absorbing all of this information through all of their senses. And it's not just a brain process. It's not just that this goes in and then our brain processes it. It actually is processed, a huge amount of it, by our autonomic nervous system, which we'll talk about a bit later. And that means that we actually react physically as a whole body and mind together, not just our minds. So this amazing way that children are aware of the world and are learning does mean that we might need to give extra thought to what they could be picking up from us, and that they will know the difference between how we're feeling inside and what we're saying. They will pick up a lot more about our emotional and physiological states than we have any ideas that they're able to do that. And that's a wonderful, wonderful skill that actually all of us as humans have to one degree or another. And what we're going to do next is look at a video about one of the mechanisms by which children are able to do that with. And this is a video by Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a clinical professor of psychiatry at UCLA School of Medicine. And it's fascinating. I love it. It's all about mirror neurons. So I hope that you enjoy it too, and that the link works in a nice, straightforward way.
But when you look at the details of how these neurons, the system of mirror neurons, how it works, then the exciting discoveries unfold. So if I were studying your mirror neurons, what would happen is if I did an action that was just totally random, your mirror neurons would not fire. If I did an action which had kind of repetition to it even, you may not be able to figure out what I was intending to do after just one or two repetitions. But if I were to take an object that would signify to you what I was trying to do, like this bottle of water, just notice what your feeling is. So you may have noticed that the feeling was very different when I had a bottle in my hand versus when I was just moving my hand in a similar way. What that tells us is that when you know the intention behind an action, a different system in your brain is activated. We now know that that system involves the mirror neurons and other areas of the brain, so that what you do is you follow a sequence of action. And when you can predict that sequence, you can determine what the implication of that sequence is. So when I have a bottle in my hand, you know I will continue to drink like this, not toss it at you, for example. That ability to understand the sensory implications, that is what you're going to see, of the motor actions that you're perceiving, allows you to create a map in the mind, if you will, that's correlated with neural firing patterns in this mirror neurons superior temporal area complex that creates a neural representation, a neural map of my intention in your head. In other words, beyond just seeing behavior, we see the intention beneath the behavior from the very beginning. Now, that's how we create the human capacity to imitate behavior.
Okay, so as he said, I love this because it is that we are all wired to pick up on what someone else is doing, to, I guess, in a way, understand it and also to experience it. So I don't know if any of you noticed, but actually when he was drinking the water himself, you may well have found yourself swallowing a bit more. because we understand that experience of being thirsty and of watching someone else drink and wanting a drink. In many ways, they think that mirror neurons are also behind the capacity of yawning, how yawning spreads around groups. So children can pick up on what we're thinking. They can also pick up on the discrepancy as well between what we're thinking and what we're doing. And when we are predictable and we're able to be predictable, then actually they can help feel safer. They have a clearer understanding of what's going to go on around them. So they might well be picking up what we're feeling and what we're doing. They'll be absorbing it, and they will be learning how to manage the world around us. And we may well see behaviours in our children that are quite a nice cue or an idea for us to help us notice that maybe we need to think about what they're picking up, what they're absorbing, and what they're learning about managing. And these might include things like they might be struggling with leaving us. They might find it hard to say goodbye. They might be wanting more time with us. They might be feeling, from our perspective, like they're being very demanding, but it might be that they're needing something. They're needing to feel that we're more present with them. They may be struggling to go to sleep at night. They might be having increased tummy aches, might not be feeling well. There may well be increased outbursts, increased stress, increased tantrums, or even increased sort of acting out behaviours. And these could all be ways of trying to go, look, I need something from you. And it can be pretty hard work, I think, to be fair, for us to be able to work out what they are and how to respond to them all. And I think that is a challenge of being a parent, is to be able to respond to our children and to try and not judge ourselves too much. So we know that children pick up on what we're doing and how we're feeling. And we also know from the research and what they need from us to create for them a sense of feeling safe and a sense of being able to learn and a sense of being able to explore the world. And I decided to use an acronym called PACE, which has been developed by a gentleman called Dan Hughes, which outlines 4 main things that are useful for adults to have around children and that help the children grow, feel safe and explore. And that's PACE. So playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And these are all attributes that we can use to try and guide our behaviour. And they're all attributes that, for us to be able to access them, for us to be able to use them, we need to have a certain amount of energy. We need to have a certain amount of well-being. And that's why looking after our own well-being is really important, because it frees us up and it gives us the resources we need to then bring playfulness into our interactions, bring acceptance, the curiosity and the empathy. So we're going to think about and hold those 4 attitudes in mind as we go through. And I think as well, if we hold those in mind with how we're interacting with our children, we can also hold them in mind with how we're interacting with ourselves and with others. Because actually, those 4 things, they boost our children's well-being, but they can also boost ours as well. And we're going to look at that in more detail as we move on through the slides. But yeah, having a jug that's a little bit over half full, or even just half full, helps give us those resources to get through each day. So we're going to move on and we're going to look at what well-being is. I've spoken about it quite a lot. It's in the press a lot at the moment. There's a lot of talk about it. And it's working out, what does it mean? So the Oxford definition talk about it being the state of being comfortable, healthy and happy. I think it's fair to say that it's really different for everybody and there is no one recipe. What is interesting about wellbeing, and I think it's important, is that it doesn't mean that everything's good. So I think sometimes happy is not always useful to focus on, but the idea that there's an absence of not so much distress, but the idea that we feel like we're able to cope can be a really useful way of looking into well-being. And well-being covers different areas of our lives. So we might have a really high levels of well-being in our physical life, but perhaps feel that our social well-being is lacking, or that psychologically we're really struggling, although it would seem that everything else seems okay on the outside. Inside we're feeling low, and we're feeling like our well-being is low. And these interactions between each of these will affect every part of our lives, and that would affect our relationships, our friends, our families, our work, as well as how we function in the larger world and our children. So well-being is, a sense of being able to cope. It can go up and it can go down. And we do need a certain level of adversity in our lives as well. We need a certain level of stress to function and to carry on, because actually that's what helps drive us as well. It is a normal part of life. So there's lots of other words for it. I can never say this one. Eudaimonia, which I've not come across. Being upbeat, wealth, contentment, lots of different sections. And what I think I really like about the idea of well-being is that it's something that we have an influence over. It's something that exists regardless of what is going on in the outside world. And there is lots of things we can do that either will help increase it over time or even decrease it over time, because some of us are our own worst enemy. I guess most people here would have gone to bed really late because they don't want to think the day before something quite important is going on, and then they feel rubbish the next day. But I think that sense of overall satisfaction of your life also includes being able to cope with daily stresses, feeling able to manage and have negative emotions and feel comfortable that they will pass and that you can still carry on while you have them. Feeling connected to your community and being able to do and enjoy the things that are important to you. So I think it's a big concept, well-being, and I think for me the key message is that there is stuff we can do. So I'm going to introduce another video at the moment, and just to break up the monotony of my voice, and I like this is a good way to think about it. It uses the word stress, but I think actually stress and well-being, you can use it interchangeably in this.
Our stress tolerance, or the size of our bucket, is a product of our genes, personality, and life experiences, and its size varies from person to person. The water in this analogy is the combination of all the stress in your life. We use the coping strategies we have available to keep our bucket from overflowing. They are like taps that allow water to drain from the bucket. Stress can include training, work, school, relationships, finances, moving, changing jobs, or the loss of a loved one. Both positive and negative experiences will affect the water level. A big bucket can hold more water or stress before it overflows. With a smaller bucket, less water is required for the water or stress level to become critical. While you can't change the size of your bucket, you can make life adjustments to reduce water coming in. You can also learn new coping strategies and stress management techniques to allow water to drain out. Mind tools, exercise, quality sleep, relaxation, and sharing your feelings with friends are some examples of effective water taps. Staying up late, sleeping in, drugs, inactivity, procrastination, suppressing or ignoring problems are examples of unhelpful coping strategies or false taps. They might give temporary relief, but actually result in water flowing back into your bucket.
So I think I love that idea and that image that, we have a bucket of well-being, and that there are stresses and adversity that pours into it, and ways that we can boost our well-being and feel better able to cope. And as well as visualizing well-being as a bucket with taps that we can use to let deal with the adversities that we meet, we can also visualize it as a balance. And again, I think this for me sums up that idea that well-being doesn't mean a life without challenge, but it means feeling okay to manage the challenges that you're faced with most of the time, not all the time. And I think being able to feel comfortable and okay that we don't actually always have to be happy. We can be affected by what is going on at the moment. And that's okay around our children too. We need to be able to help them be affected by what's going on around them at the moment as well, and have the faith that we will, and the confidence that we will manage it and we will be able to deal with it. And low mental well-being just can make it more of a challenge to cope with life's daily life. I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting, and it's always fascinated me, is that we kind of know this. Most of us know what's useful, what's good, what food we should eat, what exercise we should do, how we should look after ourselves. But it seems to be particularly hard for us to be able to do it and to be able to put it into practice. And these are some of the things that I've heard quite a lot that seem to be barriers to implementing the changes that would be useful, or even learning the skills, to be honest, of the things that would be useful and help boost our well-being. And I don't know if you recognize any of them yourselves. They do seem to range from a continuum of feeling that it's just too much to even try, that there is no time, that things will fall apart if we stop, and that somehow well-being is something that is maybe created by an extra activity in life rather than by how or the way we're doing things. And also that it can feel like it's a weakness, that it's selfish to actually want to look after ourselves because there are other people that it feels like they need us more and that they're more important. So have a ponder on some of those reasons and think about which ones it is that stop you or make it difficult for you to look after your well-being, and to think alongside that actually none of these reasons are more important than our children. Actually, the most important reason to prioritize our well-being is because we're really important to our children, and we are their base from which they explore the world, and because it's good for them, and they will have higher well-being if we're able to manage ours. So we started to look at why it's hard, and there is something about society today that does seem to make it difficult. And Brené Brown did some amazing emotion looking at some of the classic family beliefs that make it very difficult for us to stop and recognize when we need to have a bit of help, when we need to look after ourselves a bit. And one of those is that actually, to be able to recognize that our well-being is low, we need to be a little bit emotional, and that it can be hard to be emotional. It can feel like we're being weak. It can feel like we're being vulnerable, and feeling vulnerable can feel scary. There's often a sense that people have grown up in families where you don't ask for help and you don't tell. You can feel as much emotion as you like, but actually there's no point in sharing it. There's nothing anyone else can do about it. It's just emotion. And these beliefs that have come out of our family life can get in the way of us looking after ourselves as well. Another important skill that we need is the ability to find a way to express what we're feeling and to work out the difference between, if we were to take anger, I guess the difference between rage, anger, irritability, frustration, or if we were to go the other way, perhaps the difference between grief, loss, sadness, despair, misery, because having an idea of a language helps us understand it a bit more. It helps us distinguish it. And actually, if we don't know how to put it in words, sometimes we don't even try. It just feels like there's no point. So developing a language, whether it's through paint or through words, is good. Another reason it can be difficult to look after ourselves is a sense that it's just frivolous, it's self-indulgent, it's a waste of time, not for people like us. There's nothing about the stiff upper lip in discussing emotions. And that for me and my family, for example, was, we came from the background of, we're very British, we have a stiff upper lip, we just get on with it, we deal with it, I'm fine. I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine. And actually getting out of that, allowing yourself not to have a stiff upper lip, is quite a challenge sometimes because it sort of flies in the face of what you've grown up with. But it's really useful and it's really important. Another reason that it's challenging to look after ourselves can be that actually we don't know how. We don't know when we'll need to look after ourselves. We don't know what it is that will help us feel better. We might be very stuck with one or two habits that maybe when we were 19 or 23 were brilliant. It was fine to feel really stressed, go out and party on Friday, and on Saturday you'd feel more relaxed. But now you're at home and we've got 2 or 3 kids or one child, that strategy doesn't work for us anymore. It's not going to boost our well-being. So knowing when we need to stop and look after ourselves and how can be a real challenge. And fear, I think, is a big one as well for lots of people. The fear that actually if we stop, if we take the risk, it's too difficult. It's too scary. We'll start, but we won't carry through. We'll fail at it again. If we stop or do anything differently, then we might find that we drop the balls that we're trying to juggle. So trying to work through and understand why it's scary to look after ourselves can be a really useful thing to sit and do. And I think as well, we need to remember that all of these things we've talked about, they have their day and they have their moment. It can be really useful not talking about emotion when you're in the middle of a crisis. In the middle of a crisis, we need to just get on with it. But actually afterwards, if we carry on getting on with it and we don't allow ourselves time to relax and to figure it out or just take a bit of a break, then we can end up feeling burnt out and we can end up with low well-being because we haven't given ourselves the time to listen to what our body and our mind is needing at that point. So we've talked here on this slide about mostly psychological viewpoints and blocks to well-being. And it's important, well-being is a psychological state to a degree, alongside physical well-being. But well-being is also completely rooted in our bodies. And actually, our body and mind are totally interlinked. They're completely together. So what we're going to do now is move on and look at the physical side of it in a moment. So before we explore the physical side of our well-being, let's just summarize briefly. We've looked at well-being as being a balance of the challenges that we're facing in life and the resources that we have, whether it be financial, social, psychological, whatever the resources are. And that when we have a sense of balance and our well-being is good, it's okay, then we're better able to be present with our children. We're better able to be playful, to be accepting, to be curious, to be empathic. And you know what else? We're better able to enjoy them, because that's part of it, to actually be able to enjoy functioning and enjoy our children. So taking this idea that well-being is a balance, we can look at it in terms physically, in terms of well-being being a balance of the 3 systems within our body that make us up. And Paul Gilbert has described these as the drive systems. And he says that when our well-being is okay, we have a good balance between the drive system, which is about motivation. It works towards rewards. It helps us get up in the morning. It's based around the chemicals of dopamine, and it's really important. It's how we strive and achieve and find ways of satisfying what we want in life. One of the challenges for us nowadays is that the drive system is motivated by reward, and actually there's a lot of very easy ways in modern day society to get a quick reward, based on sugar, based on stimulants, based on alcohol, based on screens and stimulations. Lots of these things are very rewarding very quickly, but actually we need to be able to work out how we manage the rewards that we get that are made, from our drive system, and how we balance that with our soothing system. So our get up and go system, for example, needs to be balanced by the soothing system. And our soothing system is lovely. It's very much part of being a mammal. And one of the things about being a mammal is tapping into the mammalian caregiving system. We're born very immature as young babies, and we want to stay close to our parents. We need that warmth, that response, the sounds, the compassion of the people around us. And that helps produce the chemicals of oxytocin and responds really well to the opiate side of drugs. And when we feel safe and we feel comforted, then actually we feel relaxed. We're able to function really well. And actually, if we've got a good soothing system, we feel safe, we feel comforted, then it's much easier for us to go out in the world and work and function and achieve the rewards that our drive system wants us to get. Both of these systems are also balanced with the third pillar, which is our threat system. And this is the system that is evolved basically to enable us to survive. It enables us to run from a saber-toothed tiger or to jump out of the way of a car that's just whizzed around the corner. And it's not only about looking for danger from the world, but also designed to look for danger from other human beings as well. And as society's evolved, actually it has begun to include a new threat, which isn't external to us. And that is the threat of how we talk to ourselves and our sense of self. So things like criticism, negativity, unkindness, these are all threats to our sense of feeling okay in the world. And they activate the same adrenaline and cortisol that would be activated by the presence of a saber-toothed tiger or some other external threat. So what is important about this is to think about that the threat system, it's there for short, sharp bursts of survival, and then designed to unwind, calm down, and for the cortisol to leave our bodies. But if the threat is from a negative or an unkindness or a critical voice, we might not get the time we need to just step out of that arousal cortisol point of view. And if we're thinking about it, if it's our own self-criticism and our own negative voice that's beating ourselves up, then we are creating a sense of threat in ourselves. And that can be really tricky because it means that our brain and our body doesn't get a break from these chemicals. And it can lead long-term to health problems, and it can lead to high levels of anxiety. And even if we can't manage it, sometimes it can flip over into the other side and lead to depression as well. So thinking about how we balance these three systems is a useful way of thinking about how we achieve our own sense of well-being. And what is brilliant about all of these drive systems is that we can influence them. Okay, we have the front part of our brain, so we have a set of knowledge that we can apply. And we also have our vagus nerve, which is managed by our nervous system. And we'll look in a minute about how we can enhance our autonomic nervous system and how that works. Again, please do put questions into the chat. I'm trying to keep an eye on it as we go. So the three drive systems sit alongside our physical nervous system. And this is kind of a diagram that comes out of Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory. But I like it because it highlights the way that actually the two main parts of our autonomic nervous system work together, and we can heighten or lower either side. So we have two main branches, and this is a system that is really old in us as humans, and it's there to fight for our survival and times of danger, and to help us thrive in times of safety. So we've got two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And many of the things it controls are totally unconscious to us. So it ties into heart rate, it ties into breathing, it ties into a whole range of physical functions. And one of the things that's fabulous is that there are also ways we can have a conscious relationship with it. So a nice way to visualize it is that the sympathetic branch is a bundle of nerves that in the center of our spinal cord. And it's kind of like the petrol pedal, it's the accelerator, it's the one gets us going, gets us motivated, ties in quite a lot with the drive system, unless it goes into threat. And then it goes into that threat system. The parasympathetic side of it is a bit more like the brake pedal. And it's linked very much to the rest and digest access attributes of our life. So it's that idea that we're just going to bring it down. We're going to slow it down. We're going to look around. We're going to absorb, process. And actually, in the same way that we need to digest food, we also need to digest events, emotions, what's going on around us as well. And it's very much influenced by the vagus nerve, which is brilliant from my point of view, because we can influence our vagus nerve as well. So through specific types of breathing, of movement, of sound, and of touch, we can influence our soothing system, our vagus nerve, and that way lower the stimulation of our drive systems or our threat system when we need to. So an example I'd use to explain this would be to think about breathing, and to think about two very different uses of breathing. So for example, if we need to be alert and we need to run, we actually breathe quite quickly often, and we build up the amount of oxygen in our body so that we're primed and we're ready to flee, which can be really useful if we actually do need to flee, or it can lead us to feelings of anxiety and feelings of being actually sometimes, that fear, panic that's associated to it. But if we can influence our breathing to deepen it, to breathe out for longer than we breathe in, we can actually change the physical state of our body so that the adrenaline, the cortisol sink, and we have more oxytocin. We feel more relaxed and calmer. And we can do it with breathing, but we could also do it with self-talk. So I could sit here and I could go, God, you're rubbish at this, Laura. I mean, honestly, why'd you bother? No one's going to be listening. It's going to be awful, and then it's going to be on YouTube forever and ever and ever. And if I carry on with that, my heart rate goes and I start to feel really rubbish. Or I could sit here and go, well, do you know what? You're doing your best and you've done your preparation, and what will be, but you've given it a good shot, and hopefully some people will still be here at the end. My heart rate will slow down and my breathing will come, and my sense of feeling okay will rise. So we can use self-talk and breathing to motivate ourselves either into action or into relaxation. So we're going to move on, and you might well have come across these, and we're going to think about the NHS 5 ways to wellbeing. And there's lots and lots of really useful research, both on the NHS websites and all over the net. And the 5 ways to wellbeing were researched and developed by the New Economics Foundation for the Department of Health and Social Care. And there are very they're designed to be simple ways that we can incorporate into our life to boost our sense of well-being. So they boost our ability to have appropriate drive and to be able to soothe ourselves and have that rest and relaxation. And it can be easy, and there is a slight risk that we might think that this has to be a big change in our life, or it's going to involve an extra half an hour a day. And we can do that. And if anyone can do that, brilliant, fair play. But I think it's really important to emphasize that many of these 5 things can be achieved with very small, in the moment actions that build up incrementally to improve our well-being. And what's also lovely is that it will also improve our children's well-being. And it improves our children's well-being through 2 ways. One, through us being more present and more able to use pace. But the other being that they will learn how to do it too. And we can often do it with them. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 main ones over the next half hour or so, and look at the small changes that you can bring into life to build up incrementally, and that actually are very practical, they're very functional. So I've got another video to give you a rest from my voice.
Hi everyone, how are we all today? I hope you're all okay in the circumstances. Remember though that it's okay not to be okay, and there is support out there if you need it. Today I'd like to introduce you to the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. The 5 Ways to Wellbeing are a set of evidence-based public mental health messages and invitations to action aimed at improving people's mental health and wellbeing. They were developed by the New Economics Foundation from evidence gathered in the UK government's Foresight project on mental capital and wellbeing, and was first published in 2008. The 5 ways to wellbeing are: connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. These actions can be simple and achievable activities that you can include in your everyday lives, and if practiced regularly, can improve our sense of feeling good and functioning well. We all have the right to feel good about ourselves and the world around us and be able to get the most out from our lives. Feelings of happiness, contentment, enjoyment, curiosity, and engagement are characteristics of someone who has a positive experience of their life. Equally important for well-being is our functioning in the world. Experiencing positive relationships, having some control over our life, and having a sense of purpose are all important attributes of well-being, and something a lot of us have experienced changing over the last few weeks. It's important to remember that healthy mental well-being doesn't necessarily mean that we're never experiencing challenging situations or feelings that are difficult, but more that we're able to feel we have the resilience, support, and self-awareness to cope when things are a bit tough. The 5 ways to wellbeing have been used in lots of different ways to get people to start thinking about wellbeing and to help people incorporate more wellbeing promoting activities into their lives. It's also important in all of this that we remember we are all different, and what works for one person might not work for another. Similarly, what works for us one day might not work the same for us another day. It's about self-compassion, starting where it feels easy, making attainable intentions or action plans based on creative, open-ended ideas so that we can build success from the outset. You might also notice that one activity overlaps more than one of the ways to wellbeing, and if we can actively engage in that as a part of the process, it might help us to feel good all the more. We've put together a series of videos, each one looking at one of the 5 ways to wellbeing and what you can do to improve and maintain your mental health and wellbeing at this time.
Okay, so I love that, and thanks to We're All Mind.
We hope you found.
I will just point you in the direction actually of Mind has a wonderful set of resources on their national website, and what their resources will also do is point you in the direction of specific mental health challenges that people might be experiencing in their day-to-day life. And they've got leaflets there for both children who have parents who are suffering from anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, a whole range of mental health issues, and also leaflets for carers who are living with people who are experiencing those mental health challenges, as well as information for those individuals themselves. And I really do encourage you to have a look at that, and that is the mind.org, I believe it is. But there are links on the PDFs that we send out. So Mind is a useful place to go for resources and to explore. And of those 5 ways for wellbeing, we're going to focus over the next half hour on give, take notice, and connect. And these apply both to things that we can do to raise our own wellbeing, but also to how we can raise our children's wellbeing. And we're going to look at give first, and then we're going to look at how that links back to our autonomic nervous system and our drive systems.
Sometimes it's easy to feel like the world's getting harder. But if we look closer, on the news, on the web, on the street, we're anything but unkind. Every day, we hear new stories of people trying to make the world a better place. And together, we can make the world that little bit kinder for all of us. It all starts with just one person, you. The thing about kindness is that it's just about the only thing in the world that doubles when you share it. And it's a fact, backed by science. Studies have shown that if you perform just one random act of kindness a day, you'll not only reduce your stress, anxiety, and depression, but your body is flooded with the same hormones that make you and the person you've helped calmer, healthier, and happier. Serotonin, which heals your wounds, helps you relax and makes you feel good. Endorphins, which reduce pain. And oxytocin, which reduces blood pressure and makes you feel more loving and loved. You'll both be more energized, feel less aches and pains, more confident, and could even live longer. And if other people see you helping someone else, they'll be filled with those same feel-good hormones, meaning they're significantly more likely to pay it forward. Like taking that extra moment to hold the elevator for someone, spotting a coffee for a stranger who's just a few cents short, giving your neighbor a hand with their groceries, even just smiling and meaning it. It doesn't take much, but it can make a huge difference for everyone. Those people you've helped will help other people, and those other people will help even more people. And those random acts of kindness can start a chain reaction that can spread across an entire community, a city, a country, and with enough of us, the world. Now, isn't that the world we all want? And it all starts with one.
So it was the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation that put together that video. And I've included it here because giving to other people is one of the pillars of 5 ways to wellbeing, but it also is really important to give to ourselves. So the mechanisms of acting compassionately to other people ties in both to our mirror neurons, hence it doubling itself, but also to our chemical levels, reducing our stress hormones. And those acts of compassion, they reduce our cortisol, and they increase our feel-good chemicals. So they actually also increase our dopamine and tie into the reward system as well. So they can be seen as a real resource, and it can really help shift our sense of well-being. And not only does it shift our sense of well-being by kindness to other people, but also kindness to ourselves. So the importance of self-compassion is what we're going to look at next. And by self-compassion, I mean being a good friend to yourself. I think, we'll look at the video next, and I really like it. But before we do, I want you to think about the idea that being kind to ourselves also helps us be more empathic and give more to our children. So if we're thinking about pace ties into give, both with the acceptance of our children, with being able to have empathy for them as well. So that's how it can really benefit the children in our homes. So this is it's another short video, and it's called The Power of Self-Compassion. And in this video, we'll explore more about the importance of being kind to ourselves, the importance of, and actually of looking out for our own well-being. And let's have a look at this.
Do you have a critical voice? And if so, what do you find it saying to you?
I definitely have a critical voice. I think everybody does. And I think they all start from when you're a kid. So, I think all the things that my parents said, I hear, but it's normally about not doing a good job.
It's constantly stopping me as I try to complete thoughts or try to make steps forward.
It's a voice that always tells me that I'm not enough, or that I need to do better, or that there's something about me that I have to change.
When you fail or make a mistake, what types of things run through your mind?
I'm not worthy. Everybody's going to see my mistake. Nobody else makes mistakes like I do.
You're stupid. I can't believe you forgot something easy. This was basic. Why are you having so much trouble doing something so simple?
People don't want me around, that I'm uninteresting, boring, and or just too weird for people's company.
It says that I should have done better, and sometimes it says mean words about myself.
It's probably the loudest thing that's usually coming through my head before anything else is at least ringing that failure over and over again.
And let me give you a scenario where a friend of yours comes to you, has made a mistake, and what would you say to that friend?
Well, the first thing I would tell them that it's okay. You don't need to feel all the weight of this.
Most likely you're holding on to this more tightly than anybody else.
This in no way, reflects your character or reflects your ability to do something. Definitely a lot kinder to my friends than I am to myself.
How do you think you would change if you used that same voice that you use towards your friends on yourself during those moments of failure and mistakes?
I think it would be, incredible, because you're not going to talk to your friends the way that you talk to yourself sometimes. And I think that if you're constantly kind of reassuring yourself and letting yourself know that you are enough, then your thought process will change.
When you treat yourself like you do somebody else, you start feeling better, I think, right away, and you keep it in context much more instead of letting things be blown out of proportion.
I think I would have a lot less anxiety in my day-to-day. I think there would be kind of a weight lifted.
It would definitely make me feel better and happier, because when I usually say, when that voice that says mean stuff in my head, I'm not really happy and sad.
So I don't know if that video rang a bell for any of you, but I think that we sometimes confuse the voices in our head and the critical voices on our head by thinking that if we are critical to ourselves, then we will get better. We will motivate ourselves to improve and develop. And we are encouraged as a society to look for our mistakes and rectify them and improve them. But actually what we find is that voice puts us into threat. It activates our threat system. It hyper arouses us completely. And it actually doesn't achieve any sense of motivation or help us improve things. And it can be hard to be kind to ourselves, because we might be thinking we're self-indulgent and we're lazy. But actually we need to activate the soothing system and to be compassionate to ourselves like we are to our friends, to allow the drive system to help us get on and do stuff. So we need to be able to be, in many ways, kind to ourselves. And it's not about picking us up and, oh, I'm wow and amazing and it's all cool. It's more about saying, do you know what? Yeah, that was a bit naff, but hey, we've all made mistakes. None of us are perfect. And it's about allowing us not to be perfect. And remembering as well, I think, that lots of other people aren't perfect either, even if they seem to be. But be kindness, be like we would with a friend, like we would with our child. And a key thing about being self-compassion is that it allows us to notice how we feel. It allows us to notice that we've made a mistake and to be, okay, I've made it, okay. And by accepting it, it allows us to have a choice to do something different in future. If we make a mistake and then we berate ourselves about it, it's much harder to get into a place where we can do something differently. And Christian Neff, who has proposed the theory of self-compassion, is brilliant. She's got a great website. And again, she's talking about having the emotional language and being able to, bear with me, I've got a little mosquito around me, being able to name the difficult emotions. But there are some lovely ways that we can be compassionate to ourselves, and we can activate the soothing system. And they can be quite subtle when we're in a busy day-to-day world. And it might be something like just sitting there and, you might just look like you've got your arms crossed, but actually just giving yourself a little hug, just squeezing your arms. And our body will respond to that. It will respond to that gesture of warmth and care. Same if we just massage our hands. It will produce oxytocin. It will help us feel more relaxed and calmer, and reduce and activate the soothing system, reduce that threat system. So it might be that, if you're sitting somewhere, you can just rub the top of your legs. Or even just, if you think about the things you might do already, you might sit there at night stroking your hair or twiddling it. There are lots of things that we still do and we've done from our childhoods onwards that actually help self-soothe ourselves and activate that soothing system. If we're somewhere perhaps not in public, actually, there's some really little things like rocking is a really soothing movement to make, as is humming or singing. And these are all ways that we can activate our vagus nerve. We can just help that little oxytocin be released in ourselves. And actually, do you know what? If our children are feeling sad and our children are struggling, watching us be kind to ourselves can help them be kind to themselves. And it's the same with our children are struggling. If we can calm our own system down, it can help them calm theirs. So if a child is in the middle of a meltdown, switching off our voice and our talking and our critical brain and just go, right, do you know what? I need to stop here for a minute, and I'm going to bring down my threat. I'm going to come out of my threat system. I'm just going to bring myself down. And this is a lovely gesture in front of children, younger ones, that just seems to help calm them down. And I think it's to do with how their eyes follow your hands. So touch is a really nice way of being compassionate to ourselves as well as compassionate to other people. And actually, I can't rate a little hand massage more highly than anything as a way of changing our biochemical experience. I think we're all a bit broken. We all have a few chips, and most of us had a little bit of battering in our life. None of us are unscathed by our lives. And one of the things that I really love, and I can never quite say this, is kintsukuroi, which is the Japanese art of repairing with gold. And the belief that actually if you repair something that's broken with something beautiful, with love, with gold, it becomes more beautiful because of how it has repaired. And I think we need to do that for ourselves, actually give ourselves the acceptance and the empathy that we would give other people, and allow us to mend our own cracks and our own chips. We don't have to pretend they're not there. So we can model this for our children too. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is Take Notice, and I'm going to introduce it using, I think it's a Sanctuary video. It's great, the resources that are out there. And again, it's just a short clip.
Take notice. To take notice is to be present in the here and now. Pay attention to the world around you, nature, people, your thoughts and feelings. Be curious. Catch sight of the beautiful. Remark on the unusual. Notice the changing seasons. Savour the moment. Becoming more aware of the present moment and reflecting on your experiences will help you appreciate what matters to you.
So that's a lovely video from the Sanctuary group who put together a series of videos on the 5 ways to wellbeing. And I include it because it introduces to the idea that you don't have to spend very long to notice something. It is something that we can incorporate as we rush around in the day. We can park the car and just take a minute to just notice that we're home before we jump out, grab the children, grab the shopping, take the children into the house. It can be literally seconds or moments long. And the thing that's wonderful about taking notice is what it can do is bring you into the present. It helps you notice what you're doing. So it can either be something like, I'm noticing it's raining and I can feel the raindrops on my hand or my face for 5 seconds. Or it can just be, okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm now going to get the kids out of the car and go in and make tea. And I'm going to concentrate on doing that rather than try to make tea whilst worrying about thinking about the next 3 or 4 tasks that are ahead of us. Because actually, we still have to make tea and it still takes the same amount of time to make it, whether we're concentrating on how we're chopping the potatoes up or whether we're chopping the potatoes and thinking about the washing or the homework or whatever other task you've got ahead of us that day. And it's really helpful because it helps remind us to be curious, and curiosity is one of the things that children need from us. And if we can be curious about our own lives and what the sky is looking like or how we're feeling at that time, then we can help be curious about our children. What are they feeling about and what are they looking at and how's it going? And it can remind us to look around and think, do you know what, actually, I really like that card that I was sent, or I really like the picture that I've had for the last 10 years, but I haven't actually looked at it for a while. And that curiosity can be great because it means that we can choose to be curious about something that makes us smile, not just the pile of washing up or the dust or the crack or the whatever it is that hasn't been done that you feel guilty about not doing. So promoting that curiosity is really, really useful, and it helps us ask questions and be aware of what's going on. And I think as well, the idea of being present is about very much it's about not judging. Okay, so I'm sure that everyone has been fully present, involved in something, be it dancing at a party, be it gardening, be it running, be it listening to music. And we've not even noticed that actually we've been being aware, taking notice of what's going on. We've just been absorbed in that moment. But the thing that's lovely about it is that critical voice has been turned off. We're not judging, we're not chatting to ourselves or commenting. We're just there. And those moments help, again, boost that soothing system and keep us focused in a helpful drive system by just concentrating on what we're doing. So I think that idea of bringing ourselves out of our heads and out of the social media whirlwind is really, really cool as well. Because by noticing what's going on in our lives and just being in our life, actually it simplifies things for a little while, even if it's just for a few seconds. And I think one of the things it can also do is help us just not be on the social media at the same time. So stopping and even just noticing the cars going past your window or birdsong, that rests our brain more than 5 seconds looking at Facebook when you're having a wee. You know, it's having those moments to just stop for our brain. So ways to practice this include breathing techniques. 7-11, I think the key thing is that you breathe out for longer than you breathe in. And one really good way to do that is to breathe out as if you're breathing through a straw. And this is great for reducing the physical experience of anxiety in particular, because what it does is it raises the levels of carbon dioxide in our body. And we need that. We actually need a decent balance of carbon dioxide to help us feel relaxed and to help us to chill out. Just bring your mind to how you're feeling physically. Just notice, not so much that your belly's sagging or anything critical, but just notice like, oh, that lower back's feeling a little tight. I haven't moved that for a while. Or Shoulders, let's roll your shoulders round. And either breathe out through the areas that are tense or move them. And whilst you're doing that, those few seconds you've taken to take notice, you can also bring your children on board there as well. So you can use that as a pause to say, do you know, depending on their age and whether they'll join in or just roll their eyebrows at you, to be fair. But you can go, right, oh, I need to wiggle. Do you need to wiggle? Should we wiggle together? And it brings a little smile, especially if you're not judging yourself while you're doing it, because then you can enjoy that. When was the last time you did just enjoy stretching out and yawning? Oh, and wiggling right from the tip of your toes to the tip of your fingers. Picking a signal for you to have a mindful moment, a take notice moment, is really key. And it might be something like have a book you can dip in and out of in the loo, and you take that as a signal to just stop and concentrate on a poem or a few lines. Or I don't know about you, but I am shocking at putting the kettle on, walking out of the kitchen, not going back for 15 minutes, by which time the kettle's boiled, and then I've got to boil it again. So that idea of put the kettle on now, just wait for it. Move a few things around in the kitchen maybe, but just allow yourself to wait for the kettle to boil. Or when you're in the car and you're at the traffic lights, don't feel the urge to check your messages. Just wait at the traffic lights and look around. I'm sure nobody does. It might just be me. But pick those moments of the day that you can choose to be a signal for you to just be aware of yourself, to look around and look at something you like, something that perhaps you haven't noticed. A nice one is feeling your feet, bounce up and down on them, wiggle your toes, hold your hands as well. Do you know what? Something like when washing your hands is a really nice time to have a mindful moment, because we often don't think about it. But do you know what? If you really pay attention when you wash your hands and you concentrate on what the soap feels like, what the water feels like, and you just give yourself that extra time, something you've got to do anyway, and we can give our brains a break at that time. And I think the lovely thing is to do it with your kids, especially if they're younger as well, because it will teach them a skill that they can then fall back on. A really nice skill as well, especially if you have upset children and children that are struggling, and children are stuck in the threat drive as well, is to use the 5-4-3-1 technique. And you can use it in any order, but the sense is it doesn't matter which way. But actually, it is about bringing yourself into the moment. 5 things you can see. Can you see trees? I can see curtains. I can see a teddy bear. I can see books. I can see an old teapot. There's different things that you can look at. And again, the same. It might be that you can hear more things than you can touch at that moment. But bring yourself into the minute. What can you smell? Health warning here, don't do it in the loos in Sainsbury's, because it's really unpleasant noticing the smell in there. But it's quite a useful way of grounding you if you're somewhere nice and you can look around and you can smell the flowers, or what you've just had for supper, or your son's hair, or whatever it is that gives you that feeling. And then when you get to the end of it, just check in with yourself. How are you feeling at the moment? Do you feel a little bit calmer? Do you feel a little bit better? And then repeat it if you want to. This is great. It's by Headspace. You may well have heard of Headspace.
Hi, and welcome to Headspace. So no matter what's going on in your life right now, no matter how many thoughts are racing around your mind, no matter how the body's feeling, just take a moment to sit down and take a big deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, a sense of taking in fresh air, the lungs expanding. As you breathe out, a sense of letting go of any stress in the body, in the mind, just feeling the muscles soften and relax. And close your eyes if you'd like to. One more. Breathing deeply in through the nose and out through the mouth. Then just take a moment to pause. Allow the thoughts to come and go. And then just gently opening the eyes again. Hi, and welcome.
That little clip took 1 minute. And I'd like you to just check in with yourselves now and see whether you feel any different to how you did a minute before that. I included it really to give a little bit of a sense or a demonstration that even a minute can make a big difference on a day-to-day level in our sense of well-being. And the wonderful thing about that sense of checking in with ourselves, concentrating on our breathing, not judging, and then coming back into our day-to-day world, is that the more we do it, the easier it is to get into the sort of relaxed rest and digest stage. We get better at getting there and more familiar with it as well. Because some of you may not have felt, that you've been functioning quite high for such a long time. It might be a really weird feeling. But Headspace is great. It's a really useful resource. And it's a good resource to use with a child as well as for yourself. And it's a good resource for a child to watch you using. Because again, it just allows you to free up that empathy and that playfulness afterwards when you've managed to reset yourself. So there's a lot of research about mindfulness and self-compassion. Masses to say that it ties into really boosting how we function in the world. And reducing anxiety and depressing, really just increasing well-being overall. So the next bit that we're going to talk about briefly is connection, and we'll watch this video and then I'm aware of the time, so we'll jump forward a little bit and summarize the end so that if any of you have got any questions, you're welcome to pop them into the chat or into the question and answer, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. But the reason we're looking at connect is again because it ties into Dan Hughes's pace again, because it's about being around other people. It's about being around and connecting with our children as well as with ourselves, because if we can connect with ourselves and with the other beings around, it's going to be easier for us to be empathic. It's going to be easier for us to be playful as well. And playing is such a good thing for both us and our well-being, but also our children.
It can be hard to connect with people sometimes, especially when we're busy, stressed, or feeling low. But there's lots of evidence that keeping in close touch can help us feel happier and healthier, whether it's with friends, family, neighbours, or people at work. It can even protect us against becoming unwell. There's lots of ways to lead a life full of healthy human interaction. How you choose to do it is up to you. Quality social connection comes in lots of forms, and usually the more connected you are, the better the benefits. So here's some simple tips for building better social connections into your life. Tip 1. Make plans. Make time to talk, set plans with people, and stick to them. Tip 2. Connect every day. Try to connect with family or someone you trust each day. This could include a fixed family time, where everyone puts away their phones and shares an activity, has a meal, or just talks. This doesn't just have to be close friends and family either. Even having casual friends and acquaintances can have benefits. Try joining a new club or going out to events to meet new people. Simply talking on the phone, exchanging emails, or the occasional text message to keep in touch. Tip 3. Connect with your interests. Have a look for events or courses in your local area that interest you. Fill up your diary. Go along and say hello to the people there. It's a great way of opening up opportunities to meet like-minded people. Websites like meetup.com have a wide range of local social groups around the UK. Tip 4. Reach out. Sharing your thoughts can really help, whether it's with someone you know, a volunteer, or professional. There's always someone who can listen. Have a think if there's someone you used to be close to, who you could reconnect with. When you're talking with someone, reach out and be curious by asking them questions about themselves. This can really help you make a good connection. There are also lots of fantastic helplines with trained staff and volunteers who care about what you have to say and can offer you help if you need it. You can find details on the Every Mind Matters website. Tip 5. Offer a helping hand. If you like, you can even volunteer your time to help others. Not only is it a kind thing to do, giving to others is also a proven way to improve our own mental health, and it's a great way to connect with other volunteers as well as the people you're supporting.
So I'm going to stop it there because it moved from connection into connecting in with both give and taking notice as well. And I want to thank Every Mind Matters for that video. It's an excellent little snippet.
Find something
that is useful for us today. Bear with me because we're going to, here we go. So the reason I picked on connect and want to link it back to this idea of pace is that connecting with other people without any expectation is really useful, both for your own sense of well-being, but also I think as well as parents, we spend a lot of time concerned and worrying about the impact of everything we've been through in the last year on our children. And what I think is useful about connection is that it allows us to connect with our children purely in the soothing mode. So that idea of connecting without any expectation, without any judgment, without feeling that our job is to teach them or to protect them or to guide them, but to take that weight off our shoulders and connect with them about nothing very important. Just be there. If it's a 15-year-old who doesn't want to talk, maybe an agreement that you connect by just both being in the same room, doing something at the same time, and perhaps you don't need to talk. Maybe that with younger children, it's connecting through a shared task or through a game or through a film, as is said. And the key being that you allow yourself to put to one side the parental responsibility of teaching, guiding, protecting, trying to make things better, and just be there. And that being there allows for playfulness, it allows for curiosity, and it allows for different conversations as well. So if your teenager does come downstairs and grunts and it feels brilliant because, wow, he's talking to me, I must talk to him about this because he's just interacted, try to resist that temptation. Try to just connect rather than turn it into that sense of feeling that you have to be doing something. Because actually, for a lot of the young people in our lives and for our children, sometimes it's good to just be there and not be doing active parenting alongside them. The other side as well that connect is useful, both connecting with others for our own well-being, but also with our young children, is that it means that we can have conversations with them about what's going on. And we can give them a story that helps them make sense of what's going on in the world or what's going on for us. So if you are struggling and you're worrying and things are difficult, then it's absolutely okay to use appropriate language for their age and say, do you know what? Oh, you know how you feel a bit rubbish sometimes? Well, mummy's feeling a bit rubbish at the moment, but it's okay because I won't feel rubbish later. And do you know what? I can feel rubbish and still be okay all at the same time. I mean, one of the expressions I quite like is that idea of weeble, and that it's okay to feel wobbly because weebles wobbles, but they don't fall down. It's all right. I've still got this. I'm still your mum. I'm still your dad. I'm still here. And giving a language and a story is good for ourselves because it helps us when we connect with other people, but it's also good for the young people that are around us. And that's really useful if we're trying to deal with major conflict in our child's life, like a divorce or a loss of somebody, that it's okay that we can just be here. And we don't have to talk about everything and anything. It's just, we're here. We've got this. So please pop into the questions. I am going to finish now because it is 8:30, so I have gone on quite a lot. A wellbeing action plan is lovely if you are it's worth having a look at, because it can be a good way to have conversations with partners, with friends, with family, with schools, with professionals about the things that you might want help with to help you manage the challenges you're facing. For example, things like depression and so on. Again, it's on the Mind website, and I can't recommend that highly enough. And then just to briefly summarize, we've looked today at self-compassion. Think about a plan. I apologize for not going into that in more detail. Connect with others. Think about what your challenges are. Make some changes. To keep learning about things, to keep being curious, to keep connecting, and to look after yourself, to take notice, to be mindful. And I think those strategies will help you boost your sense of well-being. And in doing that, you'll boost the well-being of the young people around you that live in your house. I'm going to pop into the chat a evaluation that I would really love it if you would be able to, I'll come to the question as well, to complete it for me. That would be a great help for us, because it helps us improve and develop all the time in a self-compassionate way. I might point out, this isn't a self-critical way of beating myself up. This is a way of being kind to myself too. And on the screen is the link to a couple of webinars that we did about strategies for anxiety. Thank you. That's lovely. I'm really glad it's been helpful. I appreciate that. And both those webinars, to go back, are for both staff, but also for parents who have young people who are really struggling to experience anxiety. And it's worth having a look at them as well, because it can be applied to experiencing strong emotions, and it can also apply to us as adults and how we manage. Slightly unrelated, but can you recommend a group? I didn't get the end of that word. There we go. Okay. Moderation. Now, there's a family mediation service I know in Cambridgeshire. I don't know whether they do moderation between siblings, but that could well be a good place to start, and they could certainly probably give you advice. I funny feeling Relate might well help with that as well, but I'm not sure. They certainly might help all of you if you were prepared to sit and discuss that. But those are the only two things that come to mind at the moment. I hope that's useful. Thank you all for staying and for listening. It's been longer than I intended, so I'm really glad that it's been useful to people, and I would really appreciate it hopefully if you click the link, it'll just come up in the box next to you. And I hope you all have a really lovely evening. I will stop the recording now. Okay, so the YMCA is it's a national organisation. Actually it's worldwide, I think, in fact, and we do provide other services. We provide counselling through schools. We have a mental health services team that send counsellors out to schools, and we also provide training for teachers in our own area. It does depend what area you're in, because in some areas as well, they have a youth work service where the YMCA run drop-ins and buses for young people that are struggling. So I don't know which area you're in terms of the YMCA. There's lots of, depending on the age as well. So, okay, so in that area of the county, the other services wouldn't necessarily be through the YMCA, but there are, the Lighthouse Centre used to function. I would recommend looking at the Cambridgeshire Early Years webpage as well for their early prevention